Hello and welcome to the CSN3M Mindset Monday podcast. I'm Andrew Wade with Case Specific Nutrition. On this channel, we focus on the three M's: mindsets, myth busting, and mentoring, all as they pertain to health and nutrition. In today's episode, we are going to be bridging into the topic of reverse dieting, which is a pretty complex section of nutrition and a big part of what dietitians do, as well as other nutrition-focused medical professionals will do when working with clients that are dealing with metabolic slowing. Again, it's a pretty big and broad topic. So at the end of the day, today we're really just going to scratch the surface and give some understanding of why you would do it, what it can potentially do, and who it may or may not be useful for. But at base, I would recommend any of you who haven't already go back through and listen to some of my other podcasts focusing on energy and calories and understanding of macronutrients and metabolism. You don't need to necessarily listen to those before this, but these all kind of go hand in hand. And they will all help you reinforce why reverse dieting, as well as metabolic confusion, become two really, really important components of somebody that is trying to fuel their body properly and alter their body composition. So at base, the concept of a reverse diet is really in recognition of the fact that our metabolisms do not stay stable. And so something to remember or know that I can pull from previous episodes is that our metabolism is the net burn of everything in our body, from our heart beating, our brain thinking, our nerves functioning, our cells dividing, our lungs respirating. Our body being alive has a caloric expense. And it's basically all the little factories in our body doing their thing, and the body requires fuel to do that. And no different than if you want a fire to burn hotter, you need to put more wood on it. Our body is much the same. The more we eat, the more we burn, and the less we eat, the less we burn. The typical person's metabolism can actually go up and down about 50%, which means it can cut itself in half almost. And it can actually increase itself by 50%, which is a pretty massive threshold. And so something that we want to keep in mind there is that when we know that the body will burn more when eating more, burn less when eating less, we can see why so many people struggle to lose weight, but then also keep weight off, knowing that when people cut their calories or create a calorie deficit, their body initially will drop, will tap into some of their reserves, their fat stores and their carb stores, but then it will also start to go into what we like to call power save mode, which is it will start to reduce some of the energy expense, right? It'll slow down the rate of growing hair. It'll slow down the rate of growing fingernails. It'll slow down our energy levels, which makes us a little bit more sleepy. It'll demotivate us a little bit. And again, if you're someone who's ever done a restrictive caloric diet, you can recognize and probably relate to those feelings of being kind of in power save mode or being suppressed. And then also it creates hunger to try and get you to have more of a food instinct and go find food and eat more, which is part of the reason why so many people yo-yo diet. They spend time and energy trying to use discipline as a means to modify the scale. And then as a result, their body starts to literally work against them, and that stops working. And there are people that can manipulate their body fairly easily, and a lot of people that compete in bodybuilding shows can go up and down and up and down. But I can tell you, as someone who's worked with a lot of older people that have competed in bodybuilding for years prior, the metabolisms do slow and do end up getting very resilient. And I see a lot of people that are in their 40s and 50s dealing with hormonal imbalances and a real disconnect with their physiology because their body's been in these polarizing starved and fasted and starved and fed states. So what we want to be looking at, or the concept of reverse dieting, is the observation that we can actually burn more. We can get our body to burn more. And that's through eating a little bit more gradually. So if you give your body a little bit of extra food, it will actually increase its burn rate, and it'll do a little bit more. And particularly for those who exercise or are physically active, on days we move, our muscles secrete hormones that direct food and energy towards the muscles and literally put the body in a state of burn as opposed to more of a state of store. And because of this, we really don't benefit from having massive calorie deficits on workout days or exercise days. In fact, the opposite is true. We benefit more from eating more on those days, which gives us a little bit of a boost in energy, accelerates recovery, and then it also resets some hormones like leptin and insulin, and again, kind of shifts our body into this state of burn and grow and repair, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So, for those of you out there that lift weights and exercise, this is definitely a really, really important component. And then this also speaks to anybody out there who has noticed that they've undereaten for a very long time, and now their body seems to just be weight stable at maybe not an ideal body weight at a really low intake. And the first thing you need to do there is, instead of eating less or starving yourself further, aka further power save moding your body, right? Reducing your body's ability, suppressing yourself, and putting yourself down physically and mentally and emotionally, we'd be much, much better off actually leaning into it and allowing our body to burn again. And so a typical reverse diet is someone who's at a baseline calorie amount or a baseline energy amount would start by just adding 100 to 200 calories a couple days a week, 3 days a week, nothing crazy. If you're someone who exercises, those 3 days would ideally be your most active days. And then we do that for a couple weeks. And what happens is initially, you really won't notice all that much. You might be a little more full than you normally are. But then what happens is, over the course of the couple weeks, the body gets used to the little extra energy, starts to burn. If you've been someone who's been severely under eating, you'll start to notice that you're not as cold. You might notice that your body feels a little bit warmer, or that you don't need as many blankets when you're sleeping. You'll feel that your body's running a little hotter. And that makes sense because you literally just put more fuel on the fire, right? You put more energy in, which allows for a bigger caloric output. So your metabolism is literally increasing because there's more to burn. And once your body gets to that point where it's burning it, it's utilizing the energy, and it starts to feel really good, you'll notice energy levels improving. You'll notice, again, body heat production. And what we would do then is we would actually add more. So on those active days, we'd add, again, just another 100 or 200 calories and let the body accommodate or acclimate to that. And after 2 more weeks, we would then add a little bit of food to your other days. And basically what we would do is we would gradually, every 2 weeks, add about 100 to 200 calories and give your body a chance to get used to burning it. And it would set it up so that you were eating more on the days you worked out and a little less on the days you were more sedentary. But over the course of a couple months, you'll get to a point where you're now eating a much more normal amount of food. And more importantly, during this whole time, the body is burning faster and faster and faster. And so what confuses most people is, in the first couple days, the scale bumps up 1 or 2 pounds, and that's because of glycogen. It's because of carbs going into the muscles and and also going into the liver. But the thing to know there is that's why the energy comes back, is those glycogen stores, those short-term carb stores in the liver and muscle, are what keep your brain from crashing while you're sleeping. They're what keep our body stable. They're also what tell the body that there's stores, which lets the metabolism burn. It's almost like you start a fire when you've got a little bit of firewood ready, and you have a little bit on the side. So once your little stack of firewood's ready, the body feels like it's safe to burn for a while, so it turns up and turns on. And so even though the first week or so, or 2 weeks, you might notice a bump up, from there, the body tends to re-normalize and stabilize, and then just kind of almost remain flat. It does vary from person to person. Some people will even go down a little bit on the scale. Most will stay right around the same. Some people might go up 1 or 2 pounds. But all in all, it's within what we call a normal variance, because for all people, the scale fluctuates 3 to 5 pounds throughout the course of a week, just from sleep and salt consumption and stress levels and exercise and inflammation, and carbohydrate intake in the meals and the timing of the meals and the rate of your digestion. There's a whole lot of things that vary the scale. And so we're not necessarily concerned with an ebb or flow of a couple pounds, especially when we know that it's not a trend. It's literally just the body learning to burn a little bit more, burn a little bit more. And what's neat is once we get to the back end of this reverse diet, we're going to be in a much, much better place. Most people end up, if they're working with a dietitian, the amount of food that's being eaten will be kind of monitored, and we'll get to a point where there's definitely adequate calories coming in, and it's supporting the basal metabolic rate and energy expense and all of that good stuff. But for many people, it can also just be a feel. When you get to a point where you feel really good, energy levels are high, body feels like it's burning, and you're also very comfortable with how much you're eating. You're not starving, you're not crazy hungry all the time, you're not leaving yourself unsatisfied, but instead you're allowing your body to go back up to a normal amount of food that it's actually thriving on. That's going to allow all the systems, all the factories in your body to turn back on, and then we can let that thrive. What a lot of people that are very weight loss focused then try and do is they try and go right back to the old way of doing things, which is they just drop right down and start to restrict again. And all that's going to do is lead to the same cycle of suppressed metabolism. What we'd rather do instead is we'd want to look at the recognition that our body is very good at predictive patterns. If you're at a constant deficit, your body is going to suppress itself. It's going to go into power save mode. I always like to tell people, if you're trying to change your body composition, we need to try and skim the drawer, not rob the bank. And skimming the drawer is recognizing that body composition change is two things. It's supporting and protecting muscle tissue. It's letting muscle thrive and recover and be utilized properly. And then it's also one part slow depletion of any extra body fat that the body really doesn't need. If we do too restrictive of a diet, the body will start to protect. But if on days where you are training and fueling, we start to fuel you adequately, which means on the days you're really hitting the gym hard, your hardest days, through those 3 or 4 days a week that there's really good intense training going on, those are the days we want to continue to fuel and really think of them as recovery and build days, right? The days we let muscle stimulate. Because what happens is when muscle is challenged and then when it's fueled, it grows and it repairs and it tones and it tightens and it boosts metabolism as a side effect. And so it sets us up to be in a much better place metabolically, hormonally, and it also long-term helps reduce risk of falls and improves balance and mobility and flexibility in our later years. So we want to make sure we're taking good care of our muscles during any type of intentional body composition change or manipulation. We then have the days that are less intense. We've got the days that might just be normal daily activity or even maybe a little bit sedentary. And those are the days that we can actually utilize a deficit to our advantage. So what ends up happening is instead of being in a deficit every day all the time, we kind of are alternating between training days where we're fueling and then lighter days where, again, the body's not being, overfed or fed in that maximized capacity. Not starving, not under eating by any means, but eating a little bit lighter. And what's really cool is when you get into this rhythm, a couple things happen. One, the metabolism sustains. It exists, it lives, it thrives because it's being given nutrients and it's being fed adequately quite a few times over the course of a week. And then on the other side, the body composition starts to change because the exercise is more intense, because the recovery of the exercise better. That leads to really good stimulation of muscle, which also does hormonally shift things and lead to fat depletion, again, assuming there's excess body fat. And then from there, on the days where we're eating a little bit lighter, those are the days where there is a little bit of a deficit. And as a result, there is a little bit of a depletion of reserves. And so you end up in this state of what's called metabolic confusion, which is you're keeping your body in sort of a cyclical guessing state, which is going to allow it to get into a place where it's more comfortable utilizing fat stores the way they're meant to be used. Because something to remind everybody of is that fat stores are supposed to exist. There is essential body fat. There is body fat that is an organ that actually has hormonal presence, is what allows men and women to make testosterone and estrogen, serves as a really, really important base foundation for a lot of our cellular activity. We need some body fat. And then there's a little bit of body fat that our body has as sort of our freezer, if you will, our deep freeze, where it's a little bit of extra energy that's reserved for danger. And then a lot of us have a little bit of body fat beyond that, which is the extra body fat that gets utilized from energy. And while it's not really harming us, if there's an aesthetic desire, that is the body fat that we can sort of tap into. We do not tap into it long term and successfully by just having a constant deficit. Long-term deficits typically lead to, again, that crashed metabolism, but they really only create benefits in those who have what we call excess body fat that is beyond what their body really can utilize and benefit from. And if anything, their body is having dysfunction because if you get to a tipping point of body fat, there's a point at which body fat can increase, certain systemic inflammation hormones, our CRP, homocysteine, interleukin 6, and a variety of other ones that can lead to chronic inflammation and can be a catalyst that increases the risk of cardiovascular issues like hypertension and high cholesterol, as well as insulin-related dysfunction, which can lead to diabetes, among other things. So when we look at that sort of spectrum of body fat, and I did do a podcast a couple months ago that kind of looks at that, the too little, too much, just right, kind of the three bears story that is our body composition, we can recognize that a lot of people that have a ton of extra body fat, they're the ones that give up soda and all of a sudden their body's losing weight, just as an example. It's because their body's willing to get rid of it. There's a lot of extra that's not necessary. As the body starts to get more stubborn, that tells you that your body isn't necessarily unhappy with the current state of affairs. Or it means that what you're doing to it or asking it to do is too extreme or not in appropriate support. And that is where a lot of people try and rob the bank, which is massively undereat or restrict their body and then overexercise and put their body in an also inflamed state where all those inflammatory markers I just mentioned of systemic inflammation can also flare up and become a problem. If we're going to be changing body composition, we need to be doing it with our health in mind. And we also need to recognize that sometimes it's not being done in the name of health. But when you do a reverse diet and then what we call sort of that carb cycling or that energy cycling or that metabolic confusion, that's what allows the body to remain in a supported and fed state, supports muscle tissue, allows performance, allows good energy levels, but also through good activity and good exercise and caloric and energy variance can lead to a gradual depletion of body fat, which one of the most important things to keep in mind is it's not about how fast you get there. It's about how comfortably you stay there. I'm not impressed by how quickly people lose weight. I'm more interested in how well they live once they get to their ideal body composition, right? Are they moving in a way that they love? Are they doing it in a way that's sustainable? Or is their body being taken care of and challenged appropriately? And then are they fueling themselves in a way that allows for some variety, allows for some spontaneity, and then also allows for the support of their metabolic needs, allows for their muscles and their brain and their body to really thrive? And you can utilize reverse dieting to sort of break out of that restrictive diet, concept, get the metabolism fired back up. And I've worked with tons of people over the years, and it's so cool to watch because everyone's always really surprised when they start to reverse diet and the body just kind of absorbs the energy. It just takes it and it burns a little hotter, and all of a sudden the scale's not changing like they expected. So now they're at the same weight they were, but they're eating more, which is an awesome thing. And then they're better setting themselves up to have good positive health and proper function going forward. And then instead of trying to starve themselves and rob the bank, they can start to get into a place where they're instead doing small manipulations that allow the body to deplete reserves in a more intelligent and sustainable way, which gets them to a place that is much more sustainable and enjoyable and also can actually be done in the name of health. So For those of you out there that have been at constant caloric deficits and find yourself dragging with low energy and trying to force yourself and using that, draining that motivation and discipline, and also that are seeing the scale or the body not change the way you expected, it might be time to go at this from a different angle. It might be time to think about doing this a little bit differently. It might be time to start supporting your body and understanding your body as opposing to try and force it at gunpoint. Like I said, there's a lot more to this, and I encourage anybody listening that's actually interested in the concept of reigniting their metabolism and getting their body into a place that has more of a long-term support. Really, I would encourage you to work with somebody. Get connected with a dietitian. There's a bunch of us here on staff at Case Specific Nutrition that are more than happy to help. We can really help build customized and outlines and programming, but it's going to be made, with your life in mind, with what your goals are in mind. And the only thing I'll note is that what we're working on, people who are doing this, we're working on lifelong changes that get there and stay there. And so it's not a race, and it's not a rate of progress that is going to be boasting on Instagram, but instead it's going to be a quiet, behind the scenes way of life that gets you there, keeps you there, and allows you to focus on other things. It's meant to be a support for your life, not consume your entire life. And that's what we do here at Case Specific Nutrition. We work with people who have goals, and we help them kind of understand what they're doing, what they're trying to do, what are the ways to accomplish it, and then work together to try and find a positive path forward that can allow that to take place. We're always excited to hear from you with questions. Please don't hesitate to contact us through Case Specific Nutrition on all platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and social, and in Twitter. And you can also reach out to us on our website, casespecificnutrition.com. Please make sure you take the time today to subscribe to this channel. This is episode 49. I can't believe it already. We're already almost 50 episodes into the first season. And then if you liked this episode or you thought of someone while you were listening to it, please make sure to share it with them. Tag a friend or loved one, and don't forget to hashtag spread the health to help us do our thing and hit our goal of impacting as many people as possible in a positive way. Until next week, when we are back with another Mindset Monday, be well.